It is the Anfield Wrap, brought to you in association with Peloton, Liverpool FC's official digital partner. I am John Gibbons. I am joined by Rob Gutmann, by Ian Ryan and Beth Lindop. I've got Andy Heaton and Paddy producing for us. And this month our tour Peloton community has been collectively cycling, rowing and treading the distance from Anfield to Istanbul, aiming to be there for the 20th anniversary of Liverpool's 5th European Cup on the 25th of May. And we should get there, we're doing well. So there's 37 of us, I think, who've joined the challenge at the moment. And we're at Sofia, which I've worked out is 87% of the way there. So we've got 5 days, we should get there. But if you want to help us with the last final push, feel free to do so. You just need to join our group on the Peloton app. If you need the link, just message me for it. We'd love to have you on board. And then you start going and it automatically throws you in to the challenge. Also, Peloton are very kindly offering a signed Liverpool shirt to one of the participants, which we would draw at random. So anyone who's either done 1 mile or 100, you're all in the chance to win that Liverpool shirt. So thanks a lot to Peloton for supplying that, and also it's been really good fun. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed tracking us. I know a few of us have joined classes together and stuff like that, and a few people have said it to give them a little bit of a kick to get back onto the bike. Both me and Neil have joined in. I think he's beaten me slightly, but there we are at the moment. But it's all just collective. It's all just getting there to Istanbul, so it's been good fun. So if you want to join us for that final push and to stand a chance of winning that signed Liverpool shirt, it's signed by the whole squad from this season, then get involved and give us a shout. I do want to quickly say as well, before we get on to the Brighton game, that we've managed to get a few tickets back on sale for the Red Weekender event on Saturday night. So if you're hearing more about Red Weekender right at the end, but if you didn't get a ticket before it sold out, they basically moved a few things around in the structure to get a few more people in. So if you hurry up, you'll get one now. Right. Brighton though.
Yeah. What about it?
Do you know what? It is a bit of a nothing game, isn't it? So I want to talk about individual players rather than necessarily looking at, how the game went, because it was a bit of a mess. It was sort of very open, and I think it's hard to analyse the collective, but we can look at individual players, Robin, and I want to start right at the top of the pitch in Chiesa, who was probably the selection who got the most attention.
Yeah.
He was the one that people have been sort of clamouring for. He's the one who people have been saying, how can he not get an opportunity? Well, he has got an opportunity, albeit in a slightly changed team, but he's playing up top with Mo Salah and Cody Gakpo, so from a forward line point of view, he's got Szoboszlai sort of coming in behind. I mean, it's fairly first choice up there. What do you make of him in the 9 role, and is it enough to understand why maybe the manager hasn't done it sooner?
I mean, yeah, everyone was excited. I mean, there was a palpable sense of excitement when his name was announced in the pub. When I was there, everyone, Chiesa was the name everyone was hoping for. It's difficult. I think he confirmed the bias of people who think he just doesn't have a future at Liverpool, broadly speaking. He was all right in patches. I think, was there a stat afterwards he only touched the ball 10 times? Not in the whole game, was it? Or
that's what Haaland does, though, so maybe that's who he's modelling himself.
Yeah, but he's not touching the ball than you touching the ball. I think Darwin Núñez may have, was the only one less than him, and Darwin wasn't on the pitch as long either. I don't know, there were little moments. I'd say I'm a fan, as I really wanted this to work, and I'd be quietly happy if, come the beginning of next season, he's still at the club being Mr. Sixth Choice. It's a tough ask to be sixth choice striker in any squad, however good they are. And in the second, we're going to talk about transfers in the second part of the show, and there's a different story to be told really about the future lives of a number of our squad strikers, including Núñez and Jota as well. So I just don't know. I don't think we learned anything. I don't think he. What's the word? I don't think it was a terrible performance, so that anyone should sort of go, well, that's at the end of it for Chiesa. But it was an audition of sorts, and to say he passed it with anything like flying colours would be a lie. He didn't.
He looks a threat, is what I would say. I enjoyed his movement. He was trying to get stuck in and win some tackles and stuff like that, so it wasn't one to try him. For me, it's as much about his physical presence up there. I think there was a couple of times where he just sort of got pushed off. And listen, that happens to Jota sometimes as well. But, when I saw that a couple of times, I was like, yeah, maybe that's why the manager, hasn't been sort of playing him there more. And, he's clearly got an eye for goal, but the majority of time you don't get a sighted goal, it's all the other stuff, and maybe didn't quite see enough of that. What do you think, Beth?
Yeah, and I think the thing is, we still don't 100% know what Arne Slot wants from his number 9. I mean, obviously goals, but I think it's not so much that target man kind of role or just sort of being a poacher in the box. It is all of that other stuff, and I think he did look quite lightweight, and you can understand that is maybe something that's come into the manager's thinking over the course of the season. I think it wasn't for a lack of trying. I mean, he was running his socks off, wasn't he? Certainly in sort of the first 20 minutes. And I thought, because Liverpool obviously start the game pretty well, and I thought sort of during that period he looked pretty lively. There was one moment he possibly could have had a shot, but he sets, I think it was Salah. He feeds in, and it was a good ball, good pass.
There was one to Bradley as well.
Yeah. So there were flashes where you think there is quality there is a player there, but whether he's a Premier League player, I think still remains to be seen. I mean, it's harsh to, I guess, judge him really off that, because can you expect him to be up to the physicality of the league and the rhythm of the league if that's his first start of the season? Probably not. Maybe with a full pre-season under his belt, if he's able to sort of put the injury issues behind him, and as Rob said, go into next season content as being fifth, sixth choice, then maybe there is still a place for him and still an opportunity for him. But I think everyone was hoping that it would be this performance last night where you go, you can really see that he's got a future at Liverpool, and I'm not sure it really brought any more clarity on that.
Any more clarity for you, Ian?
I think it's hard, John, to be honest, for all the reasons the guys have mentioned. If you're not going to play much and then you're thrust into a game where there's nothing riding on it and half the team look like they're not at it, then it's really difficult for him as a guy who's made one start. He's barely contributed. He hasn't got the rhythm. For him to then come in and have a really strong performance is probably above and beyond fairness, if I'm honest. I think it was always going to be difficult for him. There is one moment in the first half where he's almost begging for Salah to put him in, and I think if he had laid it off to him, he would have had a really, really good chance of getting the shot off.
There was one, Ian, as well, when he makes a great run into the channel and then it ends up going wide to Gakpo, and I'm like, the ball's there. I don't know whether it was Elliot or Szoboszlai, but you've got it, and it's similar to his run in the cup final where he scores, and I'm like, just feed him in, and he ends up sort of getting it, second ball, but I think his movement's there.
Yeah, I think it is. And again, some of that is probably down to he's not playing with these players very often, so they've got to get used to his movement. Yes, they're doing stuff in training, but it's not the same as a game situation. And also, there's probably a trust thing as well, where sometimes they'll trust other players because they've seen him do it in a Liverpool shirt. There's no doubt for me there's a player in there. We've seen it before he arrived at Liverpool. He's been there and done it to some extent. So it'll be a bit of a shame if it doesn't work out, but we did get a little bit of a snippet from the manager before the game in terms of what he does need from a number 9 to an extent, because he got asked about, could Mohamed Salah shift there, for instance, in the latter part of his career and do a job, and the manager was pretty clear that to play in that role, you need to be offering a certain amount of work rate, and they've almost said to Mo, you get to do a bit less than others. So I don't think that's an option, certainly in the manager's mind right now. But I think Chiesa, to be fair to him, he does give you work rate. I take the physical presence point, but there's lots of other players who've come to these shows and have struggled early on with the physical side of the game and then have been able to kind of adjust and get better as time goes on. It's whether he's going to get those opportunities. Yeah. And I suspect if a decent bid comes in the summer, I think Liverpool will seriously look at it.
You would, but you mentioned there he's sixth choice, Robin. Yeah, sixth choice is a tough gig at a football club, and I remember the season where we had Origi and Minamino 6th and 7th. Now, which order they were in is up to you, but they ended up being our 6th and 7th choices, and I was like, that's fucking brilliant. That's unbelievable to have strikers or forwards of that calibre being his 6th or 7th choice is unreal. But it's notable they both left in the summer because they didn't want to do it, and so it's all well and good us as fans going like, oh, you want all these choices, stuff like that, but they both left that summer because they weren't getting enough games, and so I think your 6th choice either needs to be a youngster or a kid who you've got high hopes for, who you think you want around the team and they're going to get some opportunities, but isn't necessarily clambering sort of to start. So maybe you could have made an argument that could have been Ben Doak a sort of year or so ago. Now he's ended up losing the second half of his season because of injury, which is a real shame. But he was looking like at Middlesbrough that he could have been that player. So it's either someone like that, or it's an experienced player who's, you know, maybe sort of happy with the lot, happy to be at Liverpool and not going to rock the boat. And that's what Chiesa is. And you look at him and, listen, I'm sure he's not delighted not to be playing, but he's been positive all season. He's clearly sort of happy to be there. He's got quality. And so I'm a little bit on the lines of, will it unless he wants to go, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm quite happy to keep him about it in that specific role, because I don't think you're going to end up with loads better, because it's a tough gig to sell.
Yeah, I think there's a strong case for all parties to give it one more year. It's not been a fair test from this year, because almost the entire first half of the season he wasn't available through fitness. Then he was not able to get the games to get him up to speed. The manager's spoken about this, and as Ian's just said, you know, you can't judge a lad who gets a game, a few minutes, one every 10 games. It's just not going to happen. You have to look to his pedigree. I was giving it some thought from his point of view. He's had a really positive, he comes across as having a really positive mental approach to the whole situation, and that he's not kicking off. He's here to do a job of work. I think if you think about it, people often don't think about football as, you know, as family people really, but he's obviously sold it to his family, to his wife, just over a year ago. He said, hey, should we go to England, have an adventure? And you know, that sort of involves not just turning up for a year. Young children, I'm going to presume, put them in school. You're going to want to give it a couple of years. And I think mentally, back at base, when they talk as a family, they're going, whatever happens, we're giving this 2 years minimum. I can just imagine that. Any family would in the workplace. And that's what I think this is all guesswork, obviously, but I think that sort of thing can play into the attitude that we're seeing from him, which is, I'm here to do a body of work here, and I'll be patient and I'll bide my time. And even if I don't play much, I'm going to have a nice time in England. It's great. Look, at the end of the day, it's also great to be around Liverpool Football Club at the moment. Title winners. He's going to enjoy the parade, even though he'll only be able to say, I started one game in that season. I think there's enough for him to be getting on with, and there's enough for us to get out of him. And there is one thing we also need to remember. The first season we've experienced as fans watching an Arne Slot team is we've benefited from relatively few injuries compared to what we're used to. I think in the forward line, only Jota has had a problem. And what was that, for a couple of months? The rest of them have had I think I'm right in saying have had really injury-free seasons. We might not get as lucky again. It would only take two of them to be unlucky next season, and suddenly Chiesa would find himself on the bench for every single game. And if we needed to change things, he would be getting off the bench every single game, more or less. So his Liverpool career could yet change if he keeps himself fit.
The manager did talk him up a little bit prior to the Brighton game, just in terms of saying, well, you know, he's doing all the right things and stuff, and he's had a little bit of hard lines because of the injuries, and he just wasn't quite ready. But there have been times where the fan base is wondering about, could he have just got more minutes? But the manager is watching him every single day in training, so he's obviously felt something's not quite right. Maybe that's something that is solved over time. But where it becomes a little bit of a shame is, it looks like he really wanted it to work and he wanted it to happen. And I think, you know, we'll probably come on to Harvey Elliot in a minute.
Well, let's do him now, yeah.
And that's similar, where you can tell it means a lot to represent the shirt and to play for the club. And it feels like they both want it to work. But for that to happen, I think players of that age, and I know Chiesa's older, they'll want to see regular game time, and they're both not getting it.
Well, let's do Elliot then. Great segue from me and mine. You can tell he's a host.
He knows the business.
Exactly. He knows how to push a show forward when it needs to be done. With Elliot, I feel like there's evidence for whichever point you had before the game, and so he gets the opening goal. It's a really nice run. He shows great attacking intent. There's other times where, you know, he's bright in the game, but then he misses a couple of tackles in midfield, and you're like, oh, he's probably still not quite a centre mid, but he's not quite a wide player either. And does he have a place in this team? It just sort of felt to me like, you know, he didn't convince anyone, you know, either sort of way really, and the theme of this show is going to be, well, could you ever have done that in a sort of a game like this? But I felt like there was a case for the prosecution and the defence.
Yeah, there's so much to like about him, isn't there? And not least, as Ian said, just his pure will to do well for Liverpool. Like you say, you can tell how much the club means to him. And, you know, he's already achieved so much. I think it's 137 appearances, I want to say, for Liverpool already at the age of 22. Which is, you know, is really, really impressive. And he's contributed to some really big moments, a lot of them off the bench. And I think, you know, the issue has been we've all, over the course of the season, been clamouring to see a little bit more of him because he's looked so bright in these cameo appearances and we know what he's done off the bench and that he can change a game, and he has done that. But I think the issue has been when he's then been given the opportunity to start, he's maybe not grasped that opportunity. And again, not through a lack of trying or a lack of desire, but just you've seen his slight deficiencies, I think. And you know, sometimes it can really work for a player being versatile, and he absolutely is that. He can do a job on the wing, he can do a job in midfield, but can he do a job as well on the wing as Mo Salah or Luis Diaz? No. Can he do a job sort of in the 10 as well as Szoboszlai? No. So it's a hard position to be in because he's not quite. It's hard to pin down exactly where he fits in this team, and you know, as he's too talented to sit on the bench, particularly at the age that he's at now, where he wants to be playing every week. And I think, you know, there has seemed to be a definite shift in terms of his own tone over the past month or two. You know, whether, you know, there's been conversations behind the scenes, I'm not sure, but he has always been adamant for most of his Liverpool career that, you know, I'm going to prove people wrong and I'm going to stay and I'm going to fight for my chance. And I think his comments last night, it sort of reflected that actually maybe he's got to put himself and his career first, which, you know, I'm not sure anybody could deny him that. So, yeah, there's part of me that would love him to stay. I'd like to see him be given a bit more of an opportunity. But I think we did see last night, you know, I think that lack of pace, that maybe slight lack of physicality at times, you can see why he's not starting the big games, and ultimately I'm not quite sure that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, his comments after the game were quite interesting, Rob, because I'll read them out if people haven't seen. So that he talked more than this, but there's a quote here which says, "I've tried as hard as I could, and whatever happens, happens. It's about what's best for my career." And up to now, he's been very much, I'm staying, I'm a Liverpool player, this is me. And now he's starting to sound a little bit more resigned to leaving. I think it is fair to say that he has been. I mean, maybe he's heard the Florian Wirtz is on his way. That
would be the straw. the bale that broke the camel's back. You go, for fuck's sake.
But it is
Florian fucking Wirtz, yeah.
But it is a bit of a change in approach from him.
And this is the second set of quotes where he's gone in that direction. Because I think I've been sort of semi-tracking his quotes. You go back about three interviews ago, he was like, I'm Liverpool through and through. Yeah. I'm just delighted to be here. I thought, oh, great. Harvey's going to put up with this shit. Quite frankly, good, because we need a player of that quality in the squad. Last two sets of mini interviews definitely moved in a direction. I have some inside track on this from someone who I can't reveal the source of, who believes that Harvey is resigned to go in the summer. But I think it's very much going to depend on the kind of money that Liverpool get offered. Because I think he's good enough to start for anyone in the top seven. He's good enough to start for us. Let's put it this way. If we had a couple of midfield injuries and Harvey Elliot gets to be first pick in one of the midfield three positions, I think with a run of games, I think he'd do himself justice. And I don't think it would weaken us significantly. I think he's very, very close and he's quite unlucky. I'll agree with anybody around the table that I'd rather have Szoboszlai, but if Szoboszlai got an injury, Harvey would provide something different and to a very high level. He quietly gets you a goal, doesn't he, Harvey, as well? That's overlooked, which he obviously does last night. If it helped finance some of this big summer we're going to talk about, and we were to get 45, even 50 million for Harvey Elliot, I'd be okay with that happening. But me and Neil were having a chat about this the other day. I said to him, I think it's almost the first time I can recall where if we let somebody go, I'd be nervous that this one could come back to bite us.
Yeah.
Not that he could be our Chelsea's Kevin De Bruyne moment or their Salah moment. I'm not saying he still has a ceiling that I don't think anybody fully understands. He may have hit it, we don't know, but crystal ball gaze and say in 3 years' time Harvey Elliott's one of the best midfielders in Europe. I'll go, yeah, you could see that. You could see the tools were there then. Is it likely? Probably not. And that's why I think he hasn't got his place in the Liverpool team this season, and I think that's why he'll probably go. But I also think he's a victim of Arne Slot's approach to team selection, which he wasn't as much under Jurgen Klopp, which is he's very focused, our manager, and thank God he is, in the here and now. And he goes, I need a team that's going to win a football match today, and the team that's likeliest to win this football match is the one that won the last one. And although he's not blinkered, he can look ahead and he's got to manage minutes. That is his abiding thought process, I think. Very, what does it take to win this match? And unfortunately, when you're not therefore one of his first thoughts, you are going to suffer.
He always feels like a player to me where you'd want to be using him from the bench if you're looking to overload with attackers to nick you a goal, maybe an equaliser or a winner. You know, Brentford away being the example where he starts just throwing on forwards, and he does play a part that day, in fairness to him. I just can't ever really see a scenario where the manager's starting him on a regular basis when you've also got someone like McAllister in there, and all of a sudden you've got two lads out your three midfielders who are 5'7". I just don't think he'll entertain it.
Unless injuries,
possibly, but I can't see him getting the regular starts that he'll want. No, that was his second start, and his first start comes against Chelsea at the back end of the season in terms of league starts. That's going to be a hammer blow. You know, the realisation of that for him will be, you know, if I'm going to have the same next season, I probably can't stick around. I am probably too good a footballer just to be playing bit part. But I do think there are, you know, unfortunately deficiencies in his game, and some of that is a physicality thing, which he can't do anything about. There's no doubt the lad's got ability and talent. I think what it would get interesting is if someone wants to test Liverpool's resolve with a bid. And listen, you're only worth what someone's willing to pay for you. But if you look at someone like Elliot Anderson, who went for 35 million, having not played anywhere near the games that Harvey played, you know, he goes from from Newcastle to Forest, playing about 40 Premier League games. They are exactly the same age. So I think it'll be interesting to see what people are willing to pay for Harvey Elliot. Because there's no doubt, as Rob said, he would make a massive contribution to certain football sides. But I think, unfortunately, now it sounds like his tone has changed and he's willing to accept a different challenge, which will be sad again, you know, similar to Chiesa. You know, you want these lads who have got a desire and a heart and a want to play for the football team. You want them to stick around, but ultimately the manager's standards are fucking sky high. They are sky high, and if he doesn't think he can quite get there, then I think he's as ruthless as anyone, where he'll just move you on and look for something else.
Okay, let's move on to the defence, because there is a freebie award-winning gutter in part 3 that I probably should have mentioned. So we've already delved a little bit into transfer talk, but Rob Gutmann's about to get us deep and dirty with it in part 3. So I don't want to hold up the inevitable too much for the Tuesday morning. But so let's do the defenders. We'll do the two centre-halves together, Rob, Konate and Quansah. It's a makeshift defence, and so that is the case for all four of them. You know, it's not necessarily, I mentioned Chiesa before, playing with, you know, forwards who are used to playing for Liverpool. I think with the, you know, Konate is the only one who could say, you know, he's a defined starter so far this season, sort of in that back line. Obviously, he's got Bradley to the right to him, who's having a little run now and may start next season, but I think for all four of them, you do have to say it's tough when a defensive unit is just thrown together and asked to play well. But I would ask for particularly the centre halves whether you want more, whether you wanted more from them, whether you want more from them. It was interesting. Carragher after the game talked about, you know, Konate being there playing without Virgil and maybe wanting a bit more leadership from him in those situations and not necessarily seeing it. But what did you make of them as a two, both sort of individually and collectively?
I mean, first, just to reiterate, I think your point. I think they're on a hiding to nothing in a certain sense, again, because of this end of season, almost pre-season feel to the game. When Brighton sort of after our early flurry, they put on the burners and really attacked us for about 15 minutes, and I thought played very, very well. And they were on, you know, when they scored, they'd very much deserved it by that point. But I felt for the back four, who I thought, as a unit, were doing quite well under quite a lot of pressure, and I don't think they probably got as much protection as they would have got in a full-blooded version of the game. I was impressed for the first hour, I'm going to say, by Quansah. I thought he had a good game. I thought he looked a touch more authoritative than Konate. I think by the time, at the end of the day, but you come out of a game, you've conceded 3 goals. 1 or 2 of the centre-halves are going to be there at the scene of the crime, and you're going to go, well, it's not great. It wouldn't have been like that if we'd had Virgil on the normal back four. I think it's harsh to judge them really in that way. I think, Carragher said Konate should have shown more leadership. Konate's an interesting case point. I'm not what's the word? I'm not too Konate positive at the moment because of
the contract
because of the contract situation. He's also in the last quarter of the season had a few moments in games where I've thought you could do with getting a little bit better on the ball now, lads. You know, you've been around this footballing setup a while. I'd like you to push on in that respect. I thought he hasn't necessarily been on his best in the last quarter of the season. I don't think any of them need to hang their heads in any kind of level of shame after last night, but I definitely think Quansah comes out of it with more credit. I think people are very quick to write Quansah off, forgetting he's a very young centre-half. Again, he's like Elliot. You could put him under the sort of, well, if we got offered big money for him and it funds this sort of mad rebuild that we need, to say those words as champions, but then you'd reluctantly let Quansah go. But also, I think if we got to keep him, I think there'd be no bad thing. Let's put it this way. I think we have to sign one hell of a good centre-half now for it to be worth letting Quansah go.
Yeah, I'd be looking to add to him personally, and I think, I'd be more looking at Quansah and saying, well, is he good enough to be third choice for Liverpool rather than necessarily looking at Quansah. At Konate. I think Konate's proved himself. The thing is, that contract thing is in the back of your mind, really. And we don't know what's going on with that. Maybe he just feels like he's not being... We don't know what he's been offered. We don't know what he's asking for, and it is a contract situation where... it does feel like if he was paid what he thought he should be, he would sign. But obviously, if he's not, then he's got a bit of a decision to make. But I think maybe Carragher's point is, well, in the absence of Virgil, you've got a big chance there to show that, to step up and say, look, I can be a leader for this team, which is what gets you the big money. And maybe he didn't do that, but you're playing alongside a young lad. But my instinct would be still... I'd feel much more comfortable if we were adding to those two rather than worrying about having to replace one of them.
I think they do need to add. I think there's question marks over three of the four centre halves for different reasons. Joe Gomez is still kicking about, but we know there's issues there with his track record around injuries. I think Quansah, he's just taken a couple of steps back after having a really kind of good, strong first season in the main. There were a couple of mistakes in that campaign, but obviously getting taken off at Ipswich, you can imagine that would have dented his confidence for a while. And it just looks like he's the type of player, and this is often the case with centre-halves when they're around that 21, 22 age, where they could be fine for about 60, 70, even 80 minutes, and then before you know it, they've made two mistakes and you've conceded 2 goals. Because they just switch off in a really, really key moment. I don't think he's particularly great for one of the goals last night. Konate's not either, by the way, for maybe the third one, I think it was. You don't want to judge people too much on games that essentially don't really matter. But listen, for some of these players, this is their chance, this is their opportunity. And yes, the manager won't be judging them on one game, because he made the point really clearly last night. He's been watching these lads for 9-10 months now. But when they do get a chance, they've got to grasp it. And I think with Quansah, he's starting to kind of strike me now as maybe someone who just needs to play more football on a regular basis. So does that lead you down the path of maybe a loan? Just takes him onto that next level again, where he's playing consistently, he's making those mistakes on someone else's watch, and then you look to bring him back. The Konate thing, that is a problem, and it's not a problem from an ability point of view, because I think when he's at it, there's not many I'd rather have next to Virgil van Dijk when Konate's, fully at his game. I take Rob's point around on the ball stuff. I've seen improvements on that in certain moments, but I do take the point that there are times when you maybe want him to be a little bit better on the ball. But when he is at his 100% best, there's very few who can cover some of the spaces that he has had to cover during his Liverpool career. But the contract thing's a problem, John, because Liverpool cannot keep doing this thing where they're letting valuable assets walk out the door for nothing. That can't continue. And people will say, well, he's got agency and he's only got 12 months. But we know full well clubs can make it really difficult for you to stay if you're not willing to sign a new deal. It's a World Cup year next year. Yeah. He'll want to play in that. He absolutely will want to be involved. And he's not going to be involved if he's not playing regularly for Liverpool. So there's a bit of, calling each other's bluff, a bit of cat and mouse involved with some of this. But they have to get a decision from him really soon, because if they don't, then that does need a conversation about what you do next. So, quietly, Liverpool could really need to go and get maybe a couple of centre-halves. You just don't quite know yet, because of the Joe Gomez thing as well. But you don't want to be going into a season where you haven't got at least 4. So, see what happens.
Do you think, Beth?
Yeah, I think it is a bit of an issue. It is a little bit of a worry, that defence for me, just because, I felt coming into this season they probably needed to sign someone. I think obviously the emergence of Quansah last season made it less of a priority, but I did feel they were potentially leaving themselves a little bit short. Now, fortunately, Virgil's been able to stay fit the whole season, played every minute apart from last night, and Canate obviously has a little spell out mid-season, but for the most part is fit for a lot of the campaign. So, it's not really affected Liverpool too much, but I agree with Ian. I think there's a world where they possibly need to get 2 centre-halves in this summer, certainly one who can be competing for that starting place. I think, it's obviously disappointing that Dean Huijsen has gone to Madrid, because, he was the pick of the bunch, wasn't he, for most of Europe's top clubs, I think, and a player with the potential to be a starting player at the very top level for a decade. So as much as I think in a sense it's probably better he's gone to Madrid now, I think he's the sort of player who those links would have always been hanging around, and you don't really want that. But there are concerns. I think Quansah, I agree with Rob, I actually thought he played pretty well for about an hour last night. I think the first 2 goals, certainly the first goal, you can look and say, well, maybe Canate didn't cover himself in glory, or Bradley maybe could have got across a bit quicker, but I think sometimes you've just got to sit back and applaud a really good goal, and I think both the pass and the finish for that first goal were really good. And then the Matoma just seems to turn into like prime, I don't know, Ronaldinho whenever he plays Liverpool, doesn't he? But it was a great finish as well. So you don't want to pick too many holes in that performance because of all the reasons you guys have said. But, I think with Quansah, he is the sort of player who he is, like Ian said, fine. And then I think it might just be because he's a young player, but I think when he makes a mistake, it lingers, and then that has a bearing on the rest of his performance. And that is a little bit of an issue if he's going to be playing a lot of games for Liverpool. Canate, if he wants the big money, as we say, we don't really know what he's asking for at the moment, but he's probably got to be able to prove that he can step up in Van Dijk's absence. And I think Liverpool now, in the next season or 2, have to start planning for life after Van Dijk. As much as obviously it's great to have him for another 2 years, we don't know whether injuries might become more of a factor as he gets a little bit older. But in a few years' time, he probably won't be playing for Liverpool every minute, certainly, as he's been doing this season. So you need to replace not only his quality but his leadership, and I think that has to start this summer.
Okay, let's go to our heads off. Before all that, we've got Josh Sexton speaking to John Davies and Matt Rutter about the play Beating Burlusconi, which is back again.
So it's Josh Sexton here for the Anfield Wrap, and joined today by 2 special guests. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves and the reason you are here today, first and foremost, for our guests.
Yeah, John Davies, writer. We're doing Beating Burlusconi for the last ever time.
Yeah, Matt Rutter, the director, and again, we're here to talk about a show that has been going for like 20 years. It's the last version of it. With a brilliant actor, Paul Duckworth, in it.
So I think the best place to start is the sort of story behind this, and maybe some people who are familiar with this. We actually had the man behind the story on the show a couple of years ago, but for those who are maybe newer to it, John, can you give us a little bit of a rundown on how this all came about?
Yeah. I was on Hollyoaks for 5 years as an actor, and I used to have other actors who were lodgers, and they were always losing the keys, and I used to go in and get more keys cut regularly. And Paul, Mark, the fan, we used to exchange banter. He ran the shop, and I went in after the game, the Istanbul game, to congratulate him. Embittered Huddersfield Town fan. I've got to show a bit of generosity here. And I said, where'd you watch it? And he said, I was there, I was at the game. Oh, amazing, fantastic for you. He said, yeah, but this weird thing happened. I said, what was that? And anyway, he told me, and at that point, he didn't realise that he'd actually been sitting next to Berlusconi. He just thought he was some bigwig who was the AC Milan president, and he later discovered he'd got into the AC Milan VIP, helped himself to bubbly and salmon and what have you, and ended up sitting next to this guy with slick back hair. And the security tried to drag him away, but Berlusconi kind of went, yeah, and started going, well, it's 3-0, and taking the pip, And but Mark stayed there, and when Gerrard put the first one in, he realised that he was sufficiently thirsty that he kept a lid on his celebrations. But when the second one went in, he went up, and the Italians did not like it, and Berlusconi started jabbing him in the chest and shouting machine gun Italian at him, and he got dragged out. But the Turkish security who took him out, and they were saying, no, this man, you cannot. And they decided that because he had his reds on, because he was in his red shirt, he was in the AC Milan VIP, they were so smug, they didn't do anything. They thought he must be a red VIP. So they took him into the Liverpool VIP, and he watched the second half and the penalties there. And that I thought, this is just an amazing story. I wonder if I can tie something around it. So I used that as a climax for a show, a comedy about being a red, growing up through the 80s and the 90s. How do you navigate your way around marital difficulties, household bills, and still get to Istanbul? What happens when you get there? So it's the climax. That story, Mark's story, is the climax for a show about the city and about being a football fan, and specifically being a red.
Yeah, Matt, it's an amazing story. Can you remember the point at which this sort of arrived at your doorstep, courtesy of John?
Yeah, so John had approached me about directing it, and we're looking for sort of an actor to play it. And I'd worked with Paul, who's brilliant. I'd worked with him before, and I was like, this is the guy, because it's such a great play, because there's the main character, Kenny Noonan, that Paul plays, but obviously it's a one-man show, so he has to play 30, 40 different characters. He plays his wife, he plays his cousin, he plays Berlusconi, so he has to play all of this. And
Ian Rush.
Yeah, and Paul's just got this amazing ability to play a real central character, so you feel like you're watching a real person, but then do all these mad comic characters around it. So, and once we started doing it, there was just a real feel of something special in there of his performance that there's not many people who can do. I'd say anywhere, but specifically in Liverpool, he's one of the he's a real top actor. And I think that for me, watching that on stage and being part of that is the key to it, because it's just. Yeah, he's just a funny man.
And I'm intrigued to know, John, the point at which you sort of brought this back to Mark then, was it that sort of first production where he watches it and you're like, this is your story being told in front of your very eyes? And of course you mentioned that it sort of goes into a wider context eventually, but to know that he was the thing that spawned this whole idea for you must have been nice for him.
Yeah, it was a very big thing for Mark, I think, because he'd been a bit of a frustrated actor himself when he was in his teens, and he came and saw loads and loads of shows. In fact, I think he even went on tour with us once to Ireland. To go back to Paul, I was saying to Matt, I think I've probably been a bit lax in not bigging Paul up, because for me, particularly doing this show, and it's not because it's our show, it's because it enables him to show off this just amazing dexterity. He plays three characters at once, and you always know exactly who he is. That's also down to your direction. There's a card game, and there's three characters, and there's all this comedy and banter about the football, but you always know exactly who he is. And he's got to be one of the Liverpool's finest actors in the last 50 years. Him and Drew Scofie, he's a big mate of Drew's. He's going to be too old to do it soon. That's one of the reasons why. Because you can imagine doing a match length show playing nearly 40 characters. It takes it out of you. So he's going to be 50 before too long. So yeah.
And you mentioned the incredible run that you've been on with this player, Matt. You mentioned there's an Irish tour that John sort of references there. It's allowed you to do so many incredible things over the 18 years that this has sort of been in production now too.
Yeah, it was great, and it was never intended to do that in some ways. It started. We did a show above the Fly in the Loaf, whatever that is now, the pub, and then the Casa. It was just like these little shows, and then suddenly it was like. Ended up in the Blackpool Grand national tours across to Norway. It was like, it was a mad little show that became much. I think because people just saw it and were like, certainly in the city, and were like, oh God, it's like, I always say it's like, as an outsider, someone who wasn't born here, you kind of go, it feels like a slab of Liverpool on a stage that you go, oh, that's that's what this city's about. That's all these different characters. You go, that's what this place does that other cities don't. I think would be. Yeah,
we were talking about this in the car, weren't we? About neither is from the city, although I've been here 20 odd years now, and I think it enables you to see what's special about the city with an outsider's eye. I lived in Leeds for a long time, and there are other cities in Britain, Newcastle, Glasgow, which have got very strong identities, but there is something particular about Liverpool. And I was thinking about what it was, and I think a fair bit of it is the football, but there's a large bit of it which is to do with, I'm not putting up with that,
Yeah.
And I think some of that comes from the Irish, and I think Liverpool is more like that than anywhere else.
Yeah, same thing a bit.
Yeah.
But have you been surprised about how much, and the story is obviously a brilliant one, but you've been surprised how much it appeals to, I guess fans in Ireland. You've taken the show to Norway as well. Has that sort of surprised you, the global appeal of it almost?
Yeah,
it's got loads of things to it. Is your wife going to be there when she gets back? It's a very popular show with women. We get more feedback from women than we do from men because they recognise that. I mean, lots of women go to football as well, but there's the football widow, and you're going up. There's a lecky bill on the fridge. Are you going to sort that out, or are you going to go to Istanbul?
Yeah.
Am I going to be here when you get back? So there's that. But there's also a lot of people who recognise my age and maybe slightly younger, who remember the 80s and remember what was done to the city and remember what was done to the city, how the city was portrayed over Heysel and Hillsborough. And there are quite dark moments in it because you can't do a play about being a red and not touch on
Yeah,
those.
of course.
So there are those dark moments. There's also, he's from Irish heritage. So there's certain aspects. He gets a tough time at school in the 80s because that was the time of the hunger strikers and all that stuff. So there's various. So it does have a very broad appeal beyond just the passionate red.
Yeah, and such a broad appeal, Matt, because the story is so fascinating. But you mentioned this will be the last run of it. It's been it's obviously the 20th year anniversary of Istanbul now. So I mean, for the people who are watching, are invested in the story, tell them why they should come and watch this production.
I'd say because it's two halves. Go footy. There's a whole load of art to it. It's funny. It's passionate. There's a lot of the city in there, and it's just watching a man entertain you for an hour and a half. Fun. Tears, laughter. It's just. I think there's a bit of everything in it. Yeah.
And you'll see an actor at the peak of his powers. You'll see a very, very special actor doing something very unusual, really, really pushing himself, doing all these different things and being extremely funny.
Amazing. So just to round off then, I mean, you can see the leaflet on we've got it over the Robertola for now. Sorry about that, Rob. You'll have to forgive us. We've got some of the flyers in front of us here, but just tell the people where they can watch this, when they can watch this, and how they can get their tickets. I can edge that back in front if you like.
Yeah, it's on at the Dome, which used to be the Barcelona, on Renshaw Street on Friday night. 7:30.
23rd, yeah.
The 23rd, yeah. So next Friday. And on Saturday, the final weekend of the season, it's the 20th anniversary of Istanbul on the Sunday. And we've got the show in the Epstein on the Saturday night, the 24th. There's not many tickets left for that. So if you want to go on the Saturday, get in quick. It's 7:30 again.
Amazing, yeah, absolutely loads of reasons to celebrate that weekend for Liverpool, of course, but there'll be the anniversary of Istanbul to celebrate. If you want to celebrate that in the perfect way, make sure you get down and watch Beating Burlusconi. But John, Matt, nice one for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Yeah, great.
Hi and welcome to the second half of the show, which is a taster of the award-winning Transfer Gutter Show. I'm Rob Gutmann, taking over the reins from John Gibbons.
I'm going to be like an unruly kid. No, do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Just acting up.
Acting up. Yeah, knowing the supply teachers there. Yeah, Ian's still here with me. It's an exciting time to be the sort of weirdo who enjoys transfer rumours, Beth. And I'm very much one of those weirdos. Liverpool are about to sign, we think, this week, Jeremy Frimpong. Well, he's had multiple medicals. What are we hearing in terms of when they're actually going to announce this deal? Do you expect them to wait till the transfer window to open, or?
Yeah, so we're speaking to a couple of our guys over in the Netherlands for ESPN this morning, and they've heard that it probably won't be announced until the end of the season, because it has all moved pretty quickly, and it's felt like an announcement was imminent. But from what I've heard so far, it's probably not going to be until after that game on Sunday. And I think that's right in a way. I think everyone knows it's happening, and this week should be about celebrating the success of this team and their achievements. But yeah, it's an exciting deal. I think I'm really excited to see him play for Liverpool. There's so much to like about him. Yes, there might be sort of defensive deficiencies, and that could, come back to bite Liverpool at times. But I just think with him and Bradley, you've got two very different skill sets there, and I think sometimes it's about different horses for different courses, isn't it? And I think Liverpool, it'd be nice to see that real pace and dynamism on the wing, because I think Liverpool have lost a little bit of that in recent years. Obviously, Salah's sort of lost a yard or two of pace. Trent Alexander-Arnold has been moving more inside and inverting and playing in those central areas. So I think to have a wing back, or however he prefers to be described, I suppose we'll find that out next season. But to see someone with that blistering pace and an eye for goal as well is really exciting.
Yeah, he's definitely an exciting player. I've watched all his YouTubes.
Of course you have.
Of course I have. I mean, what I like about him is he looks quicker than anyone we've got in the squad at the moment. And as Beth says, I think we did need pace. I think people might be... We're talking very much about the sort of battle to come between him and Conor Bradley. And by the way, I thought Conor Bradley showed last night, certainly in the first phase of the game, that he's very aware that there might be a battle ensuing for that place. But I also think, not that I think Mo Salah's going to come under quite such direct pressure, but Mo Salah is going to go to AFCON, you would think, with Egypt, and I think it starts in December this year. So perhaps a denser phase of the season AFCON's going to happen in than we're used to in the past. So he might miss a couple more games than we're used to him missing. And obviously, would you expect Frimpong, if he's coming in as this right-sided pace merchant, to be, at that point, seen... as Mo's sort of deputy for that phase of the season?
Potentially. So I think Conor Bradley starts the season, regardless, unless there's injuries. I think there's this thing, isn't there, with transfers? So we all like shiny new things, but let's not downplay...
Damn straight we do.
Absolutely. Let's not downplay the potential.
Shiny things is the strapline for this show.
Yeah. And I thought, like Conor Bradley for the goal last night, for the Harvey Elliot one, he's fantastic. He's really, really calm. I think it gets mentioned in commentary. He's really calm in a moment where a lot of fullbacks wouldn't be. But he knows exactly what the objective is there, and he kind of finds
that second touch is delicious, isn't it?
It's brilliant. Oh, wow. I think Liverpool have got a play on their hands there. It's all about there's stuff for him to work on defensively, no doubt, and there's the fitness thing, and we'll have to have an eye on both of those. But I think what Frimpong also allows you to do, yes, there's the AFCON stuff, but I think, and it might be an awkward conversation for the manager, but there's no doubt Mohamed Salah has had a stellar season. There's no doubt about it. But towards the end of the campaign again, there are just signs that he's not quite at his full throttle best, and that's been backed up in the goals as well. They haven't quite been there, certainly from open play. I think there's only been maybe one since maybe the middle of March, something like that. Obviously, he scores against Spurs when that game's pretty much done and dusted. They all count, so that's fine. But I just think it might allow Liverpool, just on 70 minutes, if the game's done, maybe just take Salah off and give him a little bit of a break. He is getting to an age now where you have got to look after him a little bit more. And I know he won't like that, because he's all about playing. And even last night, the manager says, if I hadn't picked him, he probably would have been knocking on my door. But I don't think this manager's afraid of having difficult conversations at times. Again, it gets referenced. Pre-season, he pulls Mohamed Salah because the intensity isn't there from him. That takes a fucking big old brave boy to do that to Mohamed Salah, to pull him on that very early on in your managerial career at Liverpool, but he does. So he's not afraid to have those conversations. And we know Salah, and we're expecting Salah to still be great next season, and I expect that. But I just think this allows a little bit of jiggery-pokery at times, where you can maybe bring Frimpong in. We know he's great going forward. We know the Dutch use him further up the pitch as well. So I'm really excited about it, because I tell you what people don't want. They don't want to face pace. And by all accounts, Liverpool are going to get this one done. And then potentially someone on the left-hand side as well who's also got a lot of pace.
Do you think, John, that in some ways Frimpong is part of a Salah succession plan? Or is it just... is his signing to tell us more really about the manager wanting options than anything else? I mean, because if we brought in, we're going to come on to talk about someone like Florian Wirtz in a minute, a very exciting link. If you bring in someone like Florian Wirtz, you're going to go, you think you're going to spend that kind of money, that kind of profile of player, and you want him to be holding down a first team place for the next 8 years if everything goes according to plan. But is Frimpong a luxury squad player? I don't mean a luxury in terms of an indulgence, but just an elite squad player in a certain sense, or is he part of maybe even a Mohamed Salah succession plan?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Rob. And
it is, isn't it?
It is.
Please, yeah.
It is. It's
just came to me.
I feel like the quality of the hosting shot up in this sort of second part, and it's a lot more probing than Harvey Elliot. What do you reckon? But I
Discuss.
think because I've been trying to sort of figure it out myself, and I've been reading different things from people who've maybe seen it more than me. And so Ted Knutson, who's the guy behind StatsBomb and stuff like that, wrote something really interesting about different things we could look to do with Frimpong. He's also pretty adamant. He's just not an old fashioned right back if you can, but he's saying, well, are Liverpool going to maybe move to a three at the back? Josh Williams is arguing we've been basically playing with a three in the back anyway. It's just been Gravenberch dropping deeper and has got the screenshots to prove it. And so is it a massive jump from sort of what we are doing at the moment anyway, or is he, like you've said, and where I've sort of ended up with it is this elite squad player that I just didn't have a phrase for it, but you've given me one now.
Just came to me like that. Amazing.
Is this sort of elite squad player really, which is like he's going to be whatever we want him to be and whatever we need him to be in sort of that moment, really. And that might be some games from the bench, and he might have to just sort of cop for that a little bit, that he's not necessarily going to start games, but there'll be certain games where we do want him to start because and we want him to start right back, or there'll be other games where he's coming on, to inject pace, and that might be from right back, or it might be from, a wide right, or it might even be, one where, where we look to sort of change the formation sort of slightly and have our wide forwards more like wide midfielders, but sort of ready to spring. And so I think they're looking at his assets, and they're looking at him, rather than this is our nailed on starting right back, is this is someone who's got a lot of assets who could really contribute to our squad, and that's where I'm seeing it. But the Salah stuff's interesting as well.
Something occurred to me about.
I would read the 10 Nuts and piece, by the way, everyone. It's okay. Free and it's good.
What occurred to me about Frimpong when we've started having these conversations about him being a right-sided forward is although he's good with both feet, he's predominantly right-footed, right? Mm-hmm. So if he does deputise for Salah, as we're presuming for AFCON, for the first time in a long time, we'll have a right winger who actually plays on his right foot and goes outside rather than cuts inside looking to have a shot, which made me think, could Frimpong do a job at left wing if we have to just change things around? I suppose what I'm getting at is his versatility seems to be multifaceted. So anyway, I'm really excited to see him, and he's really quick. Let's keep reminding ourselves of that.
There's a bit of a Romano thing update while we've been recording, Rob. Just in terms of the time scales, he thinks he's going to sign his contract tomorrow, and then once he's signed the contract, it's going to be announced.
The Frimpongster.
Yeah.
Great news. I was hoping for a Florian Wirtz up there, and I'll segue
I would have just interrupted.
Yeah, you'd have to shut the whole.
That would have been an alarm.
Stop! Florian Wirtz alert, setting an alarm off. We need to talk about Florian Wirtz. We need to really talk about Florian Wirtz, Beth. It's just cruel, really, in a certain sense, because it's not that often that we seem to get linked to the most elite player available on the planet in a position. I think you really do have to go back to the signings of Van Dijk and Alisson, really, for that to have happened, to sign players who had that profile at that moment in time. What we know thus far, and in fact, you can fill me in on this because I'm sure you know better than me. What I know thus far, just from reading the internet, is that. No, actually, and from some communication with Liverpool, that Liverpool still expect him to be more likely to either stay in Germany, or that is staying with Bayer Leverkusen, or going to Bayern Munich. But I find it intriguing that Liverpool still see themselves in the mix here, and I wonder if they know something no one else does.
Yeah, I think sort of all of the noise that we've been hearing has been that there is that expectation that the Bayern have, I guess, already put the hard yards in and are at the front of the queue. Obviously, Manchester City had registered their interest in him in terms of if he were to come to England. Seems like they've now sort of withdrawn from that race. So
do you think that's true, by the way, that they withdrawn?
I think that's pretty nailed on, that they're not sort of pursuing it anymore. I think they
It's
feel
quite instructive, I think.
Yeah. So the fact that Liverpool haven't, you can, I guess, read into that if you like. I think there is that expectation he probably will stay in Germany. He's still only quite young, but I think the key thing is Liverpool. If there is a chance that he doesn't go to Bayern, they want to be at the front of the queue, and I think that is sort of where Liverpool are at with it at the moment. It sort of does. It feels like Liverpool have been on the wrong end of these kind of transfers over the past couple of seasons. The Caicedo one, I guess, is the one that springs to mind. It sort of looked like he was nailed on to be going to Chelsea, and then obviously it seemed like he'd done this sort of 11th hour U-turn, and it didn't end up happening. So yeah, it will be interesting to see if they can be on the right end of this one. But I think it is, since Richard Hughes came in, it's been about being opportunistic, and if the opportunity is there, then being prepared to move for these best players. And I think Wirtz absolutely fits into that category, and they want to be poised to make that move if indeed he's willing to make it.
I think the Caicedo saga is interesting to reflect on how Liverpool behaved back then, and it's not quite the same team behind the team then, because Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards weren't in situ. Liverpool back then was sort of played, I think, if you look back with hindsight, in as much as Caicedo, I think from what we sort of understood at the time, as Caicedo's agent came in and sort of said to Liverpool, you could have a go here, Chelsea are dicking about. And all he did, he used Liverpool really to galvanise Chelsea. Now, I'm not sure quite what's going on here. Bayern Munich are putting out, and I want you to just read between all the lines for me. Bayern Munich are briefing wherever they can. Nothing to worry about. He's our player. But if he's their player, why is he getting on planes, or at least very least his agent getting on planes and coming to England and talking to LFC? I think Edwards and Hughes are canny enough operators not just to play the stalking horse role to enable A, Leverkusen to get a better price out of Bayern, or B, to let Wirtz's people just get Bayern to get a move on and pay the fee that Leverkusen want. I'm just intrigued as to why Liverpool are hanging in there. And I don't, despite I expect Liverpool to say this, I don't think Liverpool are just going to go, we're just keeping a watching brief. It just doesn't sound right to me, that.
No, I think Liverpool will obviously be interested in the player, because if there's even a slight hope of getting someone like Wirtz over the line, of course you've got to be interested, because I think we are talking about a lad who at 22 years of age, his trajectory is only going to go one way. He's still a footballer. So I think it would be remiss not to be kind of at the table if there's an opportunity there. And I think the Man City thing's interesting, but I think that says to me that he's got no interest at all in going there, and there could be multiple reasons for that. But I don't
115 of them.
Yeah, potentially. So I don't think he's got any interest in going there. So they've obviously pulled the plug. Leverkusen, I think ideally they won't want to deal with Bayern Munich if they can help it. I think most of those clubs kicking about those kind of top four places would rather their players leave German shores and go elsewhere. I think I read somewhere that I don't think Leverkusen have done business with Bayern Munich for a long time in terms of players. I think it might have been Zé Roberto and Ballack going back to 2002, the last time players have actually exchanged in terms of proper moves. I know Tony Kroos goes to Leverkusen on loan for a bit from Bayern Munich. So I think there's something in that where those German clubs would rather those players go elsewhere. So Liverpool have got maybe a chance, but I think where it does get interesting is we don't know how much Liverpool are going to spend this summer. There's a lot of talk about it's going to be a big summer. They're going to obviously go hard on maybe 5 or 6 players. We'll have to wait and see. But it's not an area of the pitch where you would necessarily say Liverpool are desperate for someone. So are they willing to compromise other buys and other purchases for the sake of this footballer? Potentially, because he is that good. But then what does that look like in terms of other areas of the pitch? What does that mean for a number 9, for instance? Now, this is a player who can play in multiple positions, so he can play a little bit left, he can do a little bit right. We know he probably prefers to be in that number 10, maybe a little bit more central. He could do something maybe false 9 as well. But I do want Liverpool to go and make some moves in that kind of top end of the pitch, in that forward area, in that proper number 9 position. But would this compromise it? I'm not too sure, but that does make it intriguing. But I think there's no doubt if a player like this shows some interest in wanting to join your football club, and we don't know what that level of interest is yet, but if there is some there, then you've got to be interested, because we are talking about a lad who could be an unbelievable signing for someone for the next 10 years.
I've got the betting odds, by the way, on the signing for Liverpool because I may need to be betting against this, just to assuage
the pain,
assuage my disappointment. Yeah, Bayern were clear favourites a few days ago. It's now pretty 50-50 with the bookies between Bayern and Liverpool. Maybe a few more still favouring Bayern slightly, but it is getting intriguing. I'm just sort of, John, thinking about something Ian said about wanting to see a proper number 9 come in and Liverpool still have the money to spend on a number 9, and what implication would a signing like Wirtz, if he cost north of 120 million, what effect would he have on that kind of budget? I've been thinking about that, and I was thinking about Slot saying in recent quotes that in fact this week we could do with 1 or 2 new weapons, which he implied, I think, are new attacking options. I mean, he could be meaning that in the broadest sense, including Frimpong. But I wouldn't rule out, in my estimation, that even if we were lucky enough to be able to get Wirtz to join us, that they might still splash significant dough on a central striker. I mean, we've been linked to people like Ekitike, could be 75, 80 million. And the reason I come to that conclusion, and I just want your thoughts or to tell me I'm mad or not, is that we have an enormous amount of saleable assets. I mean, in the first part of the show, we've talked about the potential to sell a Harvey Elliot. We talked about a Kwanzaa. We know Nunes is likely to go. We know Kelleher's likely to go. Doak, and one of the 4, Jota or Chiesa could go. Once you start adding these numbers up, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that Liverpool sell £200 million worth of talent this summer. Never mind buy X £100 million worth of talent. So I think the budget will be there, and people will be surprised just how much Liverpool could spend if things go according to plan.
I agree with you. I think, top level striker, you're talking £100 million, but then, plus if you want an Isaac or whatever. But I think, they backed themselves to get 60-70 million for Nunes. Apparently there's plenty of interest there, so you offsetted that. A Florian Wirtz, okay, sort of isn't going to come cheap, but if, as we suggested, it looks like Harvey Elliot on his way out, then that sort of helps towards that. And it doesn't completely pay for it, of course, but they'll be expecting to make some level of financial investment this summer. And also the type of players that they're looking for and they're looking at are the kind who I think, whisper it will possibly increase in value, and as fans you don't want to talk about kind of on sale and stuff like that, because you want to just think about them playing for Liverpool, but that is a consideration. Florian Wirtz is 22. Do you know what I mean?
Only just
his best years are ahead of him. He might. There's a chance he comes to Liverpool and then leaves, and it's still his best years ahead of him. He might do 4 years here and then go on somewhere, and someone there's thinking, oh, he's 26, coming into his peak as an attacking midfielder. And so they will very much see these things as investments, and rather than thinking about this being sort of dead money, they'll be looking at it and thinking, well, these are footballers who can grow at Liverpool, who can develop at Liverpool, who can perform to an extremely high level straight away, and then maybe better. But also, if there is the time where they decide that they want to move on and they want to go and do something else, there's huge money to come back. And also, if you get, say, Wirtz and you get an Isaac, the manager's not coming to you next summer and going, oh yeah, same again, please. Do you know what I mean? The way PSR is calculated is over 3 years. We're in a fantastic position on it. Generally, speaking, people who know about these kind of things, when you read the Swiss Ramble and people like that, Kieran Maguire, that's what they're sort of all telling you. So financially, we can do a big summer. PSR, we can do a big summer. I think they'll want to do it, and it's not like it is every year, because when it is we're not firefighting. It's not like a situation that Man United have ended when you just throwing more money after bad, or you just kind of just trying to sort of things out. We've got ourselves into a fantastic position now where the squad depth is good, the talent is very good. But we're looking at the excellence. Where is the excellence? And this is what the manager's been all about ever since he come in. And it's something that he seems to really sort of preach, is that you've got to be really good footballers. So where are they? And if they cost a lot, I think these owners, although they've frustrated all of us at different times but when the big players have been out there and they needed paying for, they've done it. They've broken the record for a goalkeeper. They've broken the record for a centre half. I think they'll break the record for a striker this summer. I think that is what they'll do, and because they'll see it as they'll see spending 120 million on Wirtz as better value as spending 50 million pound on a 29-year-old who they can't sell. You know, that's how they've sort of always been. Really, that's how they've done business. And so I think, you know, at times I've wanted them to spend the 50 million pound on the 29 because I wanted to win the league. You know, that's sort of how they operate, and so I think they could go really big this summer. I agree with you.
It's interesting what they did with Szoboszlai against Brighton when he was a little bit deeper. I know you've championed that for a while, Rob, and the manager talked before the game about, you know, his best position might just be in that number 8 area. But I think with Szoboszlai, what you got to see more of last night, which, you know, could be a natural transition for him at some point, you got to see his passing range from deep, which I thought was quite impressive. You don't get to see that when he's operating in that number 10 position because it's more short and sharp stuff, and we know Wirtz is really good at those kind of through balls and nice short, sharp layoffs and little passes through the kind of lines and stuff. But seeing Szoboszlai a little bit deeper, there was part of the game where he was genuinely really good, I thought, in that slightly deeper role, and he did get to see that range of passing when he was pinging it left and right. He certainly got the engine to get up and down as well, so maybe you were just having a little look at something. You don't want to read too much into these things because I know Elliot was playing last night, so he would naturally be a bit more kind of advanced. But I think it was interesting that Liverpool decided to have a little look at that with Szoboszlai, and it wouldn't surprise me that over the next 2 or 3 years he just does move back a little bit, because I think he has got the skill set to play in multiple areas. And we know the manager, when he has been playing further forward, Szoboszlai, he has been asking for more in terms of goals and assists. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's... Maybe he was making room for Florian Wirtz, getting Harvey Elliot just to do an understudy role. But actually, it does make me think with this Wirtz thing, Beth, that if it isn't Wirtz, okay, we know what we know so far is they're very interested in Wirtz, so that's inescapable. If they're very interested in him, that's quite an investment in the idea that they want something different in that position, or something quite specific in that position. If they don't get Florian Wirtz, and obviously that seems likelier than not, do you think they'll have a plan B for that position, or do you think they'll just move on and go, if it's not Wirtz, it's no one? I mean, I know we've been linked to someone, is it Xavi Simons, Dortmund? He plays that position-ish, doesn't he, I think?
Yeah, I think... I sort of agree with what Ian said earlier. I think that number 10 position is something that could be upgraded, but I definitely don't think it's top of Liverpool's priority list, or it should be. I think it, you know, ahead of that, number 9 for me is absolutely top of the list. Centre half, full-backs. So it's probably 3rd, 4th priority, that position, and you wouldn't usually spend that kind of money on a player who is, you know...
See, that doesn't make sense for me, because I've been through that argument with a few people. And I agree with you, it seems, sorry to interrupt, but it seems 3rd or 4th priority. But if you're prepared to put 120 million, you can argue unique market opportunity, yada, yada, but I'm not quite having that.
I think I am leaning more towards the unique market opportunity thing, because I think, you know, he goes to Bayern, he signs, 7-year contract, something like that. You know, the opportunity to get him for, you know, the next 3 years at least probably disappears. And I think if he's as highly rated as all of Europe's top clubs seem to rate him, and he's available and he's willing to come, you know, I think that's why they're pursuing. I'm not saying they wouldn't definitely go and get someone, but I think it's less about Liverpool going into this summer saying, oh, we need a number 10, we desperately need a number 10. I think we'd like a number 10. If someone on the market is available, then maybe we'll move for them.
What if Elliot goes? Wouldn't that make it a necessity rather than a like to have?
Yeah, well, I think it would definitely mean bringing someone in midfield a necessity, whether that is someone who has that sort of cuteness and is sort of maybe like Xavi Simons, who is, you know, that sort of player, I guess. Or whether it is someone who plays more in the 8 or someone who plays deeper and you push Gravenberch forward a little bit. I think, you know, if Elliot goes, you need someone else in midfield. But the reason that Elliot would be going probably is because he's not going to get the minutes. And therefore, would you spend 50, 60 million on someone who's not going to potentially get the minutes? So, yeah, I don't know. I do just sort of think he's one of those sort of, I hate the phrase unicorn, but I think he is one of those sort of unicorn footballers where, you know, he doesn't come around, those sorts of players don't come around too often, and if they have, you know, if his camp have indicated that he would be interested in a move to the Premier League, I think it would be remiss of Liverpool not to be in the mix for him.
I do wonder, John, if the interest in Wirtz doesn't signal perhaps a shift in the way Slot would like to attack next season. He's spoken about Pep Guardiola finding new solutions every season. You know, Salah was speaking as well in the week quite really well about how, to turn to Ian's point earlier, that his goal return had dried up, and he said, well, teams had worked out a bit my subtle positional change, which the manager and I had engineered at the beginning of the season, and I'm going to have another chat with the manager about how my position might be tweaked again. But I'm looking at the little signifiers here, bringing in a flyer like Frimpong, very different kind of fullback in a way to Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'm looking at the interest in a number 10 like Wirtz, who would effectively take, if you sign him, he's getting picked most weeks, right? And if you sign someone like him, you're going from having a sort of a three-man running midfield of Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai to having basically, I think, a two-man pivot midfield with a star 10 ahead of you. You're kind of going a bit more 4-2-4. Do you know what I mean? I think these are little clues are signifying that he'd like us to attack in quite a different way. So this is why I think this Wirtz thing is fascinating. And whilst I do buy to a degree the idea of the unique market opportunity, I'm just not sure that they won't still, if they lose Elliot, and I think they probably will, won't look to push for another attacking player rather than a midfield player. Because let's put it this way, to labour the point here, Wirtz isn't truly a midfield player in the way I've always been brought up to think about midfield players. He's an attacking player. He's no more a midfield player than Kenny Dalglish was a midfield player, or Peter Beardsley in a certain sense. This is what I'm wondering. If we replace Elliot, are we replacing him with a semi-attacker, really?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if the Wirtz thing does sort of break down, whether that's something that they prioritise, moving forward, or whether it was just sort of, him or nothing. I think they are looking to evolve. I had a really interesting chat with Lewis Steele yesterday, which is available for Anfield Wrap subscribers on the audio bit, where he talked about. So he talked about this quote about the weapons, and he said, well, I asked that question, it was me who asked it, and he said that back to me, and he said a few people saw it and was like, oh, does this mean we're only going to buy one or two players? And he was like, I was there, he was speaking to me, I read it completely differently to that. I read it as he was talking about like different attacking threats. So attacking one or two ways that would allow you to attack in a different way, and that might be, these fullbacks who've got jetpacks on the back that we were looking to sign, or it might be a Florian Wirtz. And I think, he again talked about the fact that he thinks this team has evolved over the year, and how people get wise to you and people switch on to sort of how you play. And this is another reason why I think some of the criticism of, for example, Nottingham Forest has been a little bit harsh, is that, you can only surprise people for so long, and then they know sort of what's coming, and then you have to adapt to that. And some people have got the ability to do that within the existing squad, and some people have just got a way that they play because that's what they've got. And I think for us, he has been adapting it, and he's lucky that we've got quality throughout the team and intelligent, high-class footballers who are able to sort of adapt. But everyone will be looking at Liverpool next year. I think the commentator said last night, this is what Liverpool need to get used to. They've got a target on their back, and I think Liverpool will be the team to beat next year for the top clubs, but sort of for everyone. So he'll want to feel like he's kicked on in the summer and goes, right, if you think you've worked Liverpool out, then get on this. And I think that's part of the idea of what he wants to do, not just with Frimpong, but the other side as well. But Wirtz does take you to a whole new level potentially, really, in terms of like, okay, well, you've got all this to worry about now. I think that PSG game, although it was frustrating at the time, is something that we're going to talk about quite a bit in Liverpool's future, really. Is that something, because they just attacked from everywhere. They were a nightmare, and they caused us problems in a way that no team in this country has. Arsenal can talk about, the game at the Emirates and sort of things like that if they want, but Liverpool dealt with that okay, and then end up obviously, getting a point out of it. The way PSG attacked us, particularly in that away game, was like, they were just dragging us everywhere, and there was times you could see our lads looking at each other going like, who are meant to be picking up here? And I think that's what he wants. I think what Slot wants when teams are playing against Liverpool is to almost teams to submit. Do you know what I mean? Teams to just go like, I can't cope with this, and that's what extra weapons does for you.
Extra weapons. We're looking forward to a big summer of extra weapons. And I hope you've liked this taster of the award-winning Transfer Gutter show. Thanks to John for letting me step in and have a little go at it.
Brilliant.
No, and I'll stop. I'm blushing here. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, E. Thanks, Andy, for producing. And thank you, Patrick. And we'll see you all again soon.
We've got a little bit from Mike Dean now. It's a little added bonus.
Oh, and Mike, I know Dino. He's a good lad.
Tremendous. We are here to talk about the Red Weekender, which is this weekend. It's crept up on all of us, but it is this weekend. Loads of fantastic stuff going on and tickets are available. And to talk about all of that and the journey to it, I have got Mike Dean, who is a very well-known person in music in Liverpool, organiser, events, you name it. But I've been working with the Boss Lads for a while and I've now helped pull this amazing Red Weekender together. So, Mike, welcome back to the Anfield Wrap. I'm pretty sure you've been on before, but nice to get on again.
It's been a while. I think it might have been Benidorm the last time I was on. Boss Benidorm, John, if I recall, which is quite some time ago now, isn't it? 2022. So thanks for having me on again, mate. Cheers.
No, it's all right. It's hard to remember, what's recorded and what isn't when you just spend your life talking. But there we are. Red Weekender then. How did it come about, and how delighted are you with the offering that you are giving the Liverpool army who are descending on Liverpool this weekend?
Yeah, thanks a lot, John, and thanks for having us on to talk about it, and not least for being top tier collaborator on it as well under the banner of the Wrap. I suppose it's come about. I've been working with Dan and Sean, the Boss Lads, now since 2019. Kind of came about at the time I was working as a music agent, working kind of internationally across Europe, and I knew a lot of people in a lot of different cities who had a lot of different venues and shapes and sizes. And once the lads did that first show in Paris on whatever island it was called in Paris, before the PSG game 2019, I just thought, wow, that's something special they're doing, and maybe that's something I could help with, because they pulled that together on their own. They'd identified the venue and went out there. It was massively well received, wasn't it? I know we were all then out there in Munich for the Bayern game. Was it a round later, was it, John? And obviously the lads had gone again and hired a 1,500 cap venue that I knew well, backstage live concert venue in Munich. And that was where I met up with the lads and just said to them, I'd love to get involved and help you out. And the first show I ended up helping them out with was the semi-final of the same season, the Barcelona game. I knew the guys at Razzmatazz very well and had to explain to them what I was coming to them with instead of being a headline music act. That we all knew, give or take how many tickets it would do, what time of night it'd be on, and what day of the week. I was coming to them saying, if you open up your doors for free at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon and charge pints at €8 rather than your usual €12, we can bring you 2,300 people in through the venue for a local lad called Jamie Webster. And the rest is history, really. I've worked with the lads since then. We've done shows everywhere from Qatar, the Club World Cup, to New York, to Miami, through to the obvious places where we're very well supported in Europe, like Dublin, Oslo. So we've had an amazing ride, and I've been very privileged to be involved in the fan parks as well, not least Paris in 2022. As you know, 67,000 people, and a fun time was had by all in that fan zone that afternoon. So I've been speaking with the arena a lot recently about some different ideas and working with them. I've worked with them on many events in the past. We've got a good relationship together, and this seemed like a very natural opportunity to come back to the Boss Lads and Dan to an idea that we've been talking about for a while, and what a season to put something like this together. A full weekend of events in Exhibition Centre Liverpool, and to be honest, when we drafted the ideas, John, about who we were going for them all to come off within the first couple of weeks, and the buy-in we've had from the brands to help realise those lineups was, I think it speaks volumes for how good the event is. Coming to you guys and and coming to Redmen TV and obviously Boss themselves, and just having the opportunity to say, you know, like, first time we're all going to be able to get together and celebrate one of these. You know, how do you see your very best show looking if you've got the opportunity and the budget and the option to pull something together? Redmen TV had one idea, you know, bringing in the Dalglish family to play a game of Family Fortunes against a Redmen TV family. The icing on the cake was getting Les Dennis to actually come and host the event. That was their idea. Your idea was to do what you guys usually do, but you just said get a staff venue, the venue that you guys wanted all along, which was the auditorium at M&S Bank Arena, the lovely red seated room for 1,300 people. So I think we've helped realise the vision of all three brands that are doing this week in, week out, to offer something for everybody across 4 sessions on that. Well, I say that glorious weekend, this glorious weekend that's coming this week, John.
Yeah, it is something for everyone, and the fact that it's all at different times and different sorts of styles of events just means that people can choose what suits them, and that might be, you know, the event or the time or you know, whatever it might be, because, you know, people might be coming in for a week, they might be coming in for a day or a couple of days, and that's why it's great that there is so much there. And I've always felt it's a little bit of a shame in the past when a lot of events have clashed and things like that. And I know last year us and Redmen both did the Saturday night, and there was people who wanted to do both and things like that. But, you know, we were just putting stuff on, you know, trying our best amongst everything else. And so the fact is that, you know, the variety is there for people. If you want something to take the kids to, there's that. If you want a big show, you know, Razzmatazz Saturday night, we're doing that. If you want to see, you know, Les Dennis on stage with Kenny, you know, there is that. And then there's obviously the Istanbul celebration as well. So yeah, you must be pleased how it's all come together, and how, you know, the fact that you're able to enhance people's weekend, because I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's the fact that, yeah, we've got the match and yeah, we've got the parade, but we know that people are going to be coming for a few days, week. I know people who were here already, do you know what I mean? Who were sort of ready for it, and we want to make this party last as long as we can, and you guys are helping do that.
Oh, it's a real something for everyone, John. You're right, and not least through the three brands, the three fan brands who are doing this week in, week out to an extremely high level. And seeing if we could all do something together, seeing as obviously it's a very, very special milestone where this is going to be, you know, we're going to get to do this all together for the first time for many, many of us. You know, I mean, I'm old enough to say that I was there. I was in the main stand when we beat QPR 2-1 back in 1990, but many of us weren't. And this really is an opportunity to do so. I mean, you know, it's unbelievable, actually, isn't it, John? The 20-year, the big milestone of Istanbul just happens to fall on this weekend as well. So we didn't want to forget that, and we thought we've got to make sure that that we come up with something that marks that occasion, as well as celebrating, allowing people to celebrate, allowing people to party, allowing people to do it with their mates or do it with their family or their kids, you know, across the whole weekend. And so the first name on the team sheet was the man himself who led us to glory, and he snapped us up straight away. To be honest, he really wanted to take the opportunity to come back to Liverpool, to speak to the people and to talk, relive that magical. I mean, you know, it's still for many, and quite rightly should be, the greatest night of your supporting, you know, your time supporting the Reds. And Rafa wants that too. So to have Rafa Benitez in talking about that night, pretty much to the day on the anniversary of 20 years of Istanbul, to have Kelly involved and obviously Jamie to be involved in this way as well, is absolutely fantastic. So I'm really, really looking forward to that night to open up, to be honest. And Jamie obviously will be performing on the night himself after a little set from Liverpool fans, the Lightning Seeds. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that Friday. I'm really looking forward, as I said to you last night, John, to sinking into my red seat in the auditorium and watching you guys do your thing for 2 hours on the Saturday night. I'm going to be one of the lucky ones who's got a seat in there, because obviously it's sold out now, but we managed to release those extra couple of tickets, but they're all going to be snapped up too, aren't they, John? So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what was just a light bulb idea from Redmen TV in terms of what would you guys do if you're going to do the best show you've ever done? We would like Kenny Dalglish on stage with his family competing in a Family Fortunes live show against us. And they're going to be doing that on the sunny Saturday afternoon. Our friends, the Zootons, will be finishing off that show as well in between yours. And then, to be honest, what I'm looking forward to the most, John, is the Sunday morning, is the day, really. My son, who's 5, he's not been to Boss Kids before. He's never seen us lift the league. He doesn't know he's got tickets yet, but I'm taking him in the Cop. I'm going to surprise him that morning. He's been talking about Virgil lifting the trophy, Liverpool being champions, and singing all the songs that Jamie sings. So I'm really looking forward to taking him in to the exhibition centre to watch Jamie perform with 3,000 other families, family members on that Sunday morning, and then heading up to the ground and seeing the glory with our own eyes.
But that's it, and that's the lovely thing for me, is that we're all lucky enough to be in the ground on Sunday. We've got seasons. Lucky, but there's so many people who are coming who haven't got tickets, who know they're not going to get tickets, but they want to be in Liverpool. And so I think events like this, really help make everyone's weekend even more special, whether you've got tickets or not. Obviously, the whole city gets the parade, and that's what's great about it. But anything extra that we can do, and I know that's the big thing around the fan parks that we've obviously worked on together in the past as well, is that, whether you've got a ticket or not, whether you've been to 1,000 games or one, you can stand together with another Liverpool fan and enjoy yourself. And that's what the whole weekend should be about, really. So great that these things are on. It's great that the people get a choice of what they want to do. It's great that there are still tickets available, because I know you've sold a lot and a lot of people are coming because the space is so big. It means that there are still a few available. So yeah, if people want to get tickets for any of those events, where are they best going?
Absolutely. Thanks very much, John. Well, as we said earlier, there's a handful. Yours, the Anfield Wrap was sold out a week ago. We've managed to release a couple of dozen more yesterday. So snap them up for the Anfield Wrap before they go. Handful left for Boss Kids. That's going to be sold out next couple of days, and there's still a little bit of room left on the Saturday and the Friday night. So if you want to grab those final tickets and be part of this glorious weekend and this fantastic program, then head to the redweekender.com. Tickets are available there, or the M&S Bank Arena site where tickets are available direct. Thanks very much, John.
Mike, top man, thanks for coming on, and I'll see you at various points over the weekend.
Looking forward to multiple hugs, sweaty or otherwise. Nice one, John. Take it easy, mate. Cheers.